Hey there! I've been spending a lot of time with this Glock 43X, and I thought I'd go over how I've got it set up. I've shown this pistol quite a bit in the last few videos, but I haven't actually explained what I've done to it so far. Let's change that right now. This Glock 43X began as a bog standard 43X, not an MOS gun. I bought it at a local big box store's used section for a steal back in 2024, and I've certainly modified it quite a bit since then. Starting with the top end of this gun, the slide and barrel assembly are not what came on the pistol. This is a 43X MOS slide that I got from one of my writers, and he had put this barrel and compensator system into the gun. He did trade me this entire top end, but I've done a lot more work to it since then. One of my main goals with this gun was to modify the MOS cut to directly work with Holosun K footprint optics, so that the optic would sit lower, but also so I could use this slide as my optic testing platform. It's a pretty simple job, and it's something that I'll probably cover in a video or an article here in the future. With this being a testing gun, one of the big things I'm testing are different optics. I currently have the Olight O-Sight SE on the gun, which is a non-rechargeable optic. It's not one of the ones that uses those hoods. It uses a battery with a battery tray. And this isn't really a first impressions on it, but I'm surprised that it's working as well as it is. You can see here I have a Holosun 407K. This is the dot that I had on the gun prior to throwing this Olight on. But the long and the short is that this is one of the guns I use for testing out optics, so I swap between optics pretty easily. And with the modified cut, it makes it pretty simple. The irons on the gun are basic Glock OEM tritium ones. They're 3-dot sights. They work fine. I'm not a fan of 3-dot sights, nor am I really a fan of tritium on a red dot pistol, but they're on here as a placeholder for now. They're backup iron sights, and they work fine for shooting to point of aim, point of impact, so I really can't complain there. For the barrel, this is a barrel and compensator system from RGW, and I've been very happy with it. Part of getting into the 43X was to try the compensator systems that exist for these guns, and the RGW one really does cut down on recoil and hasn't impacted reliability or my holster fitment whatsoever, so I can't complain there. I'll have a video out on these directly, the barrel and comp system at some point, but one of the things I like about it is that rather than using shims and having to time it, it actually has a flat cut on the barrel and uses a roll pin to keep it on there. It really does reduce recoil, but it does create a ton of muzzle blast. Shooting this gun from retention, not exactly the most fun thing. At the back of the slide, I have one of the Langdon LTT striker control devices. I really like these. I have a full review for the full-size one way back from 2022, but the long and the short is that whenever the trigger gets pressed and the striker starts to move, the back plate hinges out. This is a thing that you can put your thumb on the back of the gun, and when you pull the trigger, the striker won't be able to move. I like this for holstering. It allows me to keep my thumb in a natural position when I'm holstering the gun, and that allows me to be a little bit more safe. Now, obviously, this isn't a placeholder for proper holstering techniques, but if I can have an extra safety on the gun that doesn't cause any sort of downsides, I'd be happy to take it. Moving down to the frame, I have aggressively stippled it. This is something that I showed in the previous video I did on the OT Defense stippling kit that they sell, but I'm very happy with it. I went back and did a little bit more touch-ups on some of the angles and some of the straight lines just to make them a little bit nicer, but I really do dig having that more aggressive texturing on the pistol. Helps to keep it locked into the hand, especially in the summertime when it's sweaty and hot outside. I have converted this 43X to use the Shield S15 magazines by using one of their metal magazine releases, and I'm mostly using the Gen 3 magazines right now. I'm also using the magwell in the gun here because I find that it helps to really lock my grip in, and yeah, it does make reloads a little bit faster, but I find that it really helps to get my grip nice and high on the gun, especially out of the holster. I've already got videos covering the magwell, and I'll be doing a video or videos pretty soon on these S15 magazines, but I've used them for a long time, and I do trust them, but I do understand the testing I have to do to them to get to the point of feeling trustworthy with them. I won't be ripping the gun apart here, but I will talk about the internal work I've done to it, which is fairly minor. I am using one of the Ghost Ink connectors in the gun, and I am using a reduced power firing pin block spring. Those two things together do help to smooth out the trigger press a little bit, but to also drop the weight a hair. But I also went back and did some internal polishing. This gun had some really rough mim marks on the trigger bar, and I just went and took a nice fine sanding stone and then very high grit sandpaper to it to smooth it out. You may have heard of the 25-cent Glock trigger job. I did that. I can already hear a lot of folks saying that, oh, just shoot the gun more. I've had to do this on my guns that I've got 10,000 and more rounds on. There are some parts of the trigger bar assembly that, while they make contact, They're not doing anything to polish themselves as part of that contact. And I wanted to get rid of some of those manufacturing burrs. I did it on here, and again, gun's empty. I'll show the trigger press here. It's still very Glocky. I've never had issues with light strikes, and truth be told, the reliability in this gun's been fantastic. But that trigger press is still about 5 pounds, but it feels like it's pretty well evenly distributed between the first part of the take-up and then the break itself. I would say probably about 2 pounds for the take-up, about 3 pounds for the break. This is one of the better Glock triggers that I currently have, and it's all with OEM parts, barring the ghost connector and the reduced power firing pin block spring. And that pretty much covers the work I've done to the gun itself. For going out and shooting with it, I zero with my HSTs that I carry, and then I do most of my shooting with 124 grain Spear Lawman or NATO spec stuff. I find that the hotter ammo tends to work better in these compensated guns because more recoil in the system means more recoil for the comp to work with, and I really do like how it shoots. This is a gun that I find to be quite flat shooting, although it is snappy. And this is one of those things where I'll pull out the 48 here, and just comparing these two guns side by side, the 48 is a softer shooting gun, but I feel like you get more of that kind of flippiness with it due to the extra mass that's moving in the longer slide. With the 43X, and especially with that comp, I find that it's very quick and very sharp. It's one of those things where I like this gun, but I do think that for a lot of folks, they'll find it to be less pleasant to shoot than something like the 48 here. For holster purposes, I'm using the same JM Custom Kydex AIWB Wing Claw 2.5 that I've used for my 48. I do have other holsters I'm testing, like some from Tenacore, but this is still my go-to holster for the gun, and I really do like it. I've already got a video on the channel for all of JM Custom Kydex's stuff, and I would certainly recommend it. I really do dig it. This might sound like a broken record, but I am really enjoying this 43X. It's been a fun platform for testing out different optics over the last year, and it really is something that I look forward to shooting. I've got about 15,200 rounds through my 48 here, but I'm only at 2,500 rounds through the 43X. Now, a good chunk of that shooting, I would say probably about 500 rounds, was with it in the iron-sighted configuration before I got this upper end of the gun, the full slide assembly with the RGW barrel. But I'm about 2,500 rounds through this gun, and again, I just really enjoy shooting it. It's really just an enjoyable gun to go out with and run drills or even just do fun shooting, doing some plinking with. I find it to be a very enjoyable experience. So what do you think of the work that I've done to this gun so far? Is any of it something that you'd like to do to your own Glock 43X? Let me know in the comments down below. Big thanks to our subscribers and channel members, our Patreon patrons, and our channel donators. See you in the next video!